where does Composio fit in the entire AI stack?
Composio is essentially making a developer's life super easy by allowing them to essentially connect their LLMs or agents to a bunch of different tools out there in the world.
Recently, Elon Musk retweeted one of Karan's posts.
It was a very calculated post. We kind of got a cake that Elon retweeted us. So we're trying to sort of give you wings in a way. We're basically building something that every developer building AI agents would use. I speak to ChatGPT 2 hours every day. All my investor pitches were uploaded to ChatGPT, and then I was asking them like, did I do a good job at it? We essentially went to Valley a lot, like early in our journey, to observe like how folks were doing it. I think Valley has a lot of noise. We went there, collected enough data, came back, executed on it. Currently, LLM applications or agents are not that reliant. So the one thing Indian founders lack is ambition.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Day One podcast with Elevation Capital, where we chronicle journeys and stories of the founders we partner with. I am Poorvi, I lead the AI investments at Elevation Capital, and today I have with me Soham, who's the co-founder of Composio. Composio is an all-in-one integration platform to build AI agents. We partnered with them from early days in their seed round, and today I'm very excited to have Soham with me here. Welcome to Day One, Soham. How are you?
I'm good.
Awesome. Thanks for taking out the time to do this for us. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Composio, your journey, and how do you see this world evolving? So let's start with the origin itself, right? What insight, what problem statement led you to building what you're building today? Let's start with how you started about thinking about building Composio.
In my previous company, I was basically running a team of around 10 to 15 engineers, and one of the core parts of the product was building integrations, and every engineer kind of hated building integrations, right? It's one of the things that you would want someone else to do because you just feel you're not learning enough while doing it, right? And so I realized that this is something that definitely seems to be a really big problem because nobody wants to do it, and something that should be automated. Just didn't really understand how to do it well. I was basically one of the early beta users of GPT-2, and then saw code editing and like Da Vinci's model sort of coming in, and kind of realized that, hey, with code generation coming in, maybe we could sort of solve for integrations using code generation. That was the early genesis of the idea. Kind of started tinkering around and like doing a bunch of different things with that. Soon enough realized that sort of we're so we are basically building code generation to solve for integrations back in 2023. LLMs are not smart. Basically, code generation was not there yet, and we're trying to build something similar to agents, what you call today. But like it was too early in its time, and like realized that this is not possible. But one of the other things we kind of learned while doing all of that was that, hey, if you ended up sort of building something like an agent to do something like a use case, like you probably had to connect an agent to maybe GitHub, linear, stuff like that. And so basically agentic integrations were also kind of a really big problem. And like you had a bunch of different things that you had to solve for. And that was like the genesis of what we sort of call Composio today, which is like, maybe agentic integrations are like large enough problem that we should be solving for.
So Soham, I remember in the early days, right? Every 2 weeks I would meet you. You would be like the starry kid who would have figured something new out on what AI is, where AI is actually making progress, what's happening. From the early days to today, right? What has changed from where we started thinking about what Composio could be to what Composio is today?
Yeah. I think like as it is with like any founder out there, like you basically have some level of vision. The early vision was that integration was a big enough problem in the world, and basically it was a problem that was technically not solvable because like integration is a very personal problem. Like the way I would want integration in my own product would be very different than how someone else would want in their product. And so the idea was like you will basically have to generate code for that specific problem, and that kind of seemed impossible to do, right? And so we basically early days we were tinkering around, we were like playing around, like figuring out, is there something here that we can maybe solve for, right? We went through multiple iterations like of like just the problem itself, because like you kind of also, so think of with AI is that it's a very evolving kind of very like tech, but you also want to figure out like where does it meet the actual problem that exists today, and like how can you bridge that specific problem to that specific technology. And like so that's what we have been doing, right? Like, and like so if you think about like what changed, we went through multiple different iterations. We built agents in the middle, we built like integrations in the middle, we built agentic integrations like after a point in time, and then eventually came to realization that, hey, here's the sweet spot where like the existing tech actually potentially meets the solution out there, and kind of they go very well together to actually, you know, like create a really good impact. So yeah, a lot of different changes along the way has.
Yeah. No, but that's very interesting. For anybody building in AI, you need that agility. You need to be that excited, that excitement that I every time saw in you. I think it was very important. But Soham, let's take a step back, right, to explain to people who are viewing this today, what does Composio do today and why is it so exciting?
Sure. So the way I think about it is, Composio is essentially making a developer's life super easy by allowing them to essentially connect their LLMs or agents to a bunch of different tools out there in the world. Like we basically, let's say you are a developer and you are thinking about like, hey, I want to build an agent that can essentially go and write an email for me and maybe send an email out through Gmail. Okay, awesome. But then you will have to solve for authentication. Like, how do you connect your LLM to Gmail? Then you will have to essentially solve that for a bunch of your users because you are trying to create a product around it. Maybe you will have to write that sort of specific tool that allows an LLM to do that nicely. You have to solve for reliability of our agents because again, currently LLM applications or agents are not that reliable, right? We do all of this via a single platform. Literally in like 2 lines of code, you can essentially build this sort of agent, take it live and like go running with it, right? So we're trying to sort of like kind of give you wings in a way, right? Wherein like a lot of infrastructure and the core things, the hard things, you don't worry about it. You just go and like create something out there in the world and we'll make it super easy for you to do that.
And today, now, Soham, if we have to think about, and that's something that people always ask us also, right? That, hey, where does Composio fit in the entire AI stack? So if you can actually elaborate and, you know, clarify, where does Composio fit in the entire AI stack that a company has today?
Yeah, sure. So if you think about it, right, today in AI, basically like your company, you are building in like AI agents or LLMs, you essentially have like your foundation models, you essentially have your frameworks on top of foundation models. Your frameworks could be like LangChain, Crew AI and a bunch of others, right? And then you basically have like tools. Like tools are essentially what allows your agents to connect with the world, right? Tools allow you to build like real world applications, and tooling layer is what Composio essentially solves for. We do basically execution of tools, evaluation of tools, making sure that tools are reliable enough, become a single registry. We give you pre-built tools available. Like we essentially add a lot of value in the tooling layer. So we are kind of in between the application and the frameworks.
No, super interesting. And Soham, now, obviously, right now we are building the integration layer for agents. We are also building the authentication layer. What is your grand vision of what Composio could be? Like, what keeps you super excited about where we are headed?
The way I think about the world is that eventually, if you fast forward 5 years down the line, you will essentially have, if you think about like how humans behave, right? Yeah. Like so think about it this way. Like you essentially have an intelligence layer that allows you to function in day-to-day society, but then you have like some level of skills that are registered in your brain. So like if I tell you to write your name, you can just do it out of box. You don't really have to learn it, right? It's a skill that like kind of almost like a muscle memory that we call it, right?
Yeah.
And I think like basically Composio is in a way building for that action layer or the skill layer, right? That sort of just acts below the intelligence. So if you eventually have something similar to like a weaker AGI or almost like a very highly intelligent LLM, I think Composio acts as that intelligence skill layer, wherein like whenever LLM tries to do something, it understands it basically registers that, and it basically allows LLM to communicate with the world in almost a very nice sort of efficient manner. And that's what we will eventually become, which is like a very nice way for LLM to communicate with the world.
This is very interesting, right? Because that's the part which is broken today and more people want to solve them for themselves. So another thing, right? Like while there is so much advancement that we've done on the product building itself, and I know like you and your engineers keep on tinkering, this is the true tinkering mindset that I have seen in your team. Very young engineers, a lot of them just coming up with new ideas. But how do you think about just getting the word out, right? And you know, in the recent past, obviously you guys have done such a good job and getting things out, being out there to to talk about what you're building, how you're building it. What was the true mindset there that, hey, you know, it's not easy for a lot of founders to keep showing what they're building, but I see every day there's a post from Composio. You and Karan are actually on every hackathon out there. You're talking to more and more people. How are you thinking about internally, just about user acquisition, getting the word out?
I think like in the end, as like world progresses, tech starts becoming a little more common, right? Like code generation is now really good. Like software writing is more and more easier. I think what sets you apart at this point in age is like just like how good are you about like spreading like word about yourself, and like basically like there's a taste function to it, but then also there's a sort of like how much like people kind of appreciate what you have built and a bunch of different things that go into it, right? So when it comes to about Composio, right, like we were like basically very technical founders. We had no idea how growth works. We literally had zero insight on like, okay, how do you even talk about your product, right? But I think the one thing that kind of we internalized was that in this day and age, if we don't do that well, then like everything else we do is kind of irrelevant, right? And so we kind of went very deep into like how good companies do it. Like one of the easiest ways to learn anything is like just look at a good person and like figure out like how they do it, right? And so we looked at like, for example, Crew AI was one doing really good job at that point in time. Varsal was doing amazing in general, how they kind of grew, right? And so we kind of really went and learned a bunch of things they did and internalized that this is something that as a primary skill we have to develop, and we spent hours at it, right? Like today also, like every day, like 30% of my time just goes into thinking about growth. And like once you sort of start really getting deeper into growth, you realize it's so interesting, because actually a lot of growth right now, like especially for a dev tool product, is more about like how can you engineer it in a way that like people kind of find you, appreciate you, right? And a lot of it is very interesting, like very small things that you can do to get the word out going, right? And yeah, so for us, it was just initially it was like a little chore, but an important part of the whole sort of puzzle. And then eventually it just became something I really love to do basically on a day-to-day basis.
As Indian founders, that's something that we've always encouraged. We've always found that, hey, this is something that how do we do it better? There's a lot of founders in the West who are, that comes naturally to them. Maybe it came naturally to you. I don't know. I think I have my doubts, but I think you really progressed on it very fast. But what changed? Like essentially, especially for Indian founders, when you meet newer founders who are on that journey, starting on that journey, what is the feedback that you would give them that, hey, this is probably an interesting way to do it? What are some of the things that worked for you?
Few different pieces of advice, right? One is you need to study people who do it really well. I think a lot less people do it than I actually thought would be doing. Think about it this way, like growth in today's day and age is a lot more public, right? So like if I had to study like how Versal does growth, a lot of it is just out there. I literally need to go to Twitter, I need to go on like Google, I need to go on like a bunch of blogs, but I can actually learn how they did significant part of their growth just by searching online, right? And if you do this like enough times for enough number of companies, you will start seeing some very interesting patterns.
Yeah.
And those patterns will teach you how growth is being hacked, or like in a way, like the way I would call it is like how growth is being done by a bunch of these companies, and like how it's like the sort of skill itself is evolving, right?
Yeah.
So like growth is all about like finding that few channels that kind of really work, right? And those channels keep basically changing, because as one channel sort of starts getting like basically filled, like it stops becoming like good enough, or like it stops mattering, right? And so just finding those new channels that like all of these companies are like getting into, and then just like basically getting into those channels earlier than most other companies would, actually like sets you apart. The other way to think about it is like you kind of need to go to places where people are really good at it. So like for example, a bunch of growth things that we learned were from by going to SF, right? And like basically just talking to founders there and asking them, okay, how did you end up growing so quickly? And then they will teach you like stuff they did, which may or may not be relevant to you, but you can understand the mindset that they sort of think from, right? And then you can start emulating that mindset. And like that's one of the other things that we ended up doing, right? And so that also helps you a lot, right? And like after a point in time, once you start to do a bunch of these things, it just comes to you, because then you are thinking like that, then you already know like in and out of like how other companies are doing it, and then you can sort of innovate on it. You can actually be the sort of first person to figure out like a channel that nobody really thought of. So I think it's that essentially.
Got it. I think another thing that I've seen again, which you guys did well in early days and still early days, but I think you started spending a lot of time in the valley in hackathons, spending a lot of time with founders where you thought you could learn a lot from. I think again, I would say that is this something that you think everyone should do? Like Indian founders, just move to the valley as soon as possible, don't move. And there are always 2 points of debate here that, hey, some founders want to do it after their product is ready. Some founders want to do it from here. Some founders go very early. Where is your mindset on it?
Yeah, so I have a very contradictory point of view here. Or maybe not so much, right? But the way I think about it is this, right? We essentially went to Valley a lot, like early in our journey, to observe like how folks were doing it, right? The idea was like we just want to see how really good founders are doing stuff, go and meet them, talk to them, understand their mindset, and just like see like how people realize and basically execute on a bunch of different sort of insights that they have, right? We kind of did that for a while. Then we came back to India. The journey is like we came back to India. We essentially started executing on it. We kind of had our own insight on how like Composio could be useful and like Composio should be created, or like what the product could look like essentially. And the thing with me is like, for example, I think Valley has a lot of noise, and so I was not able to think very clearly when I was in SF on like, because like you have so many strong opinions, right, being sort of bombarded around you, and like it becomes very difficult to have your own like line of thought. So for me it was all about data collection, right? I basically just went there, spoke to so many people, and then came back to India, really thought about it, and sort of like came with an idea like on what we want to do, right? And I think that works very well if you are going there for a visit. The other insight is maybe you can just go shift there. Now that can also work for you if you're going to spend a long time there, right? But then you basically kind of have to actually shift that. Like if you're only going there for like 2 or 3 months, I would very highly suggest like just go collect as much data as possible, go meet as many people as possible. But if you're like if you have the like let's say luxury to potentially just shift there in the early days of a company, I think that's also fair. It's actually pretty advantageous because you'll get a lot of customers there. You'll get a lot of your own sort of like founders who are very similar to you, who can actually teach you a bunch of different things very quickly, and your learning curve explodes very nicely, right? So I think there are like 2 different ways to go about it. We chose the first way, which is like we went there, collected enough data, came back, executed on it, and now we are going there permanently soonish, right? Because now we have a very good sort of growth momentum going there.
Very interesting. So is it fair to say that probably India was your thinking place versus SF was your selling place and learning place in the early days?
I think it still is, right? Because until you reach a point where you are very comfortable with a place, like for me, you can't really, and like the other thing is SF has also too many strongly opinionated people who will come to you with some insights, right? And then you really respect them because they are very intelligent, they are very well known, right? And so like, okay, maybe this person is right? And like you don't give yourself enough credibility to actually like outgrow that insight, and I think some people have that problem, some people don't. So it's totally.
That's very candid of you to share that, and especially in early days, most founders go through it, right? Because you look up to people, you want those insights, but how do you maintain your original thinking to extract what is required versus not is a very, very interesting power and a superpower one can have.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very, where do you stop believing yourself and where do you actually start believing some expert, and when to even do that? I think those are very hard questions.
Yeah. And Soham, like today where we stand, again very early days for Composio, but very interesting momentum that you're seeing. What is keeping you excited? Where is that momentum coming from? Who are the kind of people who are using us?
Yeah, so I think the momentum that we started getting was mainly because agents and like LLM applications kind of started becoming mainstream, right? Yeah. And as LLMs became better and better, like I would say more intelligent, the use of LLMs in actual real world applications kind of like blew up, right? And so for us, like the majority of our users are developers who are kind of building real world applications using LLMs, and then they basically want to make sure that they are able to connect all of these LLMs to all of these applications very, very quickly. And yeah, like the O1 kind of was one like O1 model, for example, from OpenAI was one of the things that kind of also blew up like LLM usage. Before that, Claude Sonnet was like another LLM that came in and just suddenly blew up everything, right? So I think like as this better models come in, like you'll constantly see rise of these applications.
Yeah, I think the other part that I wanted to sort of discuss was just how do you build the team around this, right? Obviously, as founders, both Karan and you, and I've seen you closely, you're super tinkerers, right? Like every day. And there were months where we were not even talking and you were like just tinkering on a bunch of things to say that, hey, we'll come out with something, but because we're just finding and exploring. How do you keep that culture internally in the team? When you start, and I know that you're already getting there, that when the team grows, how do you keep that culture of tinkering or figuring out? Because in AI, you need that agility.
Yeah, I think more than AI, it's the dev tools, right? If you think.
I agree.
Yeah, it's like if you're a company that is building dev tools, you need to have a culture of like making sure that you use enough dev tools to know actually what good tools look like and what bad tools look like. And like the day you start doing that, the day you lose the grip on like, okay, where's the culture at, right? Like what's a good taste, like, right? And so that was the whole reason we kind of tinkered a lot, right? And I think like this is something that we also believe like everyone in the team does, right? It's like we actually like really encourage people to go and use new things that come up, right? Like I was one of the earliest users of Cursor, like back in those days, right? Earliest users of GPT-2, right? Like I think if you don't do that well, you can't really build a great dev tool. Like that's one of those things that keeps you alive, kind of like.
Very interesting. And I think on the similar point, right, now that you think about hiring, how do you think about what to hire for in the US versus what to hire for in India? Like, how do you make that judgment today?
Yeah, it's super tricky, right? And we are very, very early, so we also don't know how to think about it, right? But then there are some clear things that you can maybe hire for in US, right? Like most of our customers right now are in US. So having someone out there who's like really good customer facing, actually can work with them and like get those things, like get projects live, would be like an obvious person
Hire.
there. The DevRel, for example, like most of our developers are in US, right? So getting someone out there who can like represent Composio on like DevRel, like developer relationship essentially, would be like an immediate sort of, we need someone in US, right? There are some things where you could be like, it doesn't matter if someone comes, like we are hiring for like a research role, right? When like we want someone who can do amazing research on like evals essentially, and like how agent tool evals could look like. And like you don't really care if someone comes from US, India, maybe Europe, right? Like all we care about is need someone who's really good at it, right? So yeah, there's some roles where you know for sure you want someone in US. There's some roles where you're like, it doesn't matter where the person comes from as long as they are good, right? Like yeah, it's a kind of mix right now.
Yeah. So let's get back to that go-to-market question, right? You have more than 15,000 developers on the platform. So huge momentum on getting those early customers, early adopters. What drove that adoption and where is it headed today?
So I think one thing we decided very initially was that we didn't want to sort of go friends and family route, right? Like one of the earliest ways, one of the easiest ways you can get customers is you go to your friends and family, you tell them, hey, I'm building this, would you be open to using it? I think that helps a lot. But for us, it was like, it gave us wrong signals because a friend will always tell you good things about your product, right? And so we wanted like someone anonymous out there in the world testing and using our product and like basically providing us feedback. And so the idea was from day one to get users on internet, right? The easiest way to do that was for us, we are basically building something that every developer building AI agents would use. So we went to a bunch of Discords, we went to a bunch of sort of online forums, and we talked about like what we are building, how I'm building. I still remember like the first message I sent out saying, hey, we're building this, would someone be open to using it, right? And you get like a lot of people who would be very interested in like, oh, this sounds interesting, can I actually try? And this was like the first time like we got some early like 3-4 users starting to actually tinker around with our product, starting to use us. And this is like now more than a year earlier, right? And that is how we got some of the initial people out there. They don't really care enough where they will provide you very strong feedback, but essentially they would still give you enough signals on whether what you are building is interesting enough for you. And then if you are building something really cool, it has chance to go viral. So what ended up happening was In the first sort of like virality for Composio was CrewEye founder saw about us in some Discord, in CrewEye's Discord, and he basically picked us up and he literally just tweeted about us. And like that tweet went like really viral, and we got like so much insane inbound because of that one specific tweet. And that was my introduction to Twitter, by the way. That was like, holy shit, like Twitter works, right? Like, that is the thing, right? It's just like you create enough touch points where something can eventually maybe be picked up by someone interesting enough who can like make it little viral. And like that was my first introduction into getting like 100 developers starting to use the product, right? And like after that it was more about like, okay, so these are the things people really like, these are the things people enjoy, how do I get more and more word out around it? So we went and like explored Reddit. Like I used to use Reddit almost daily, never used to post on it, and then I started posting about us on Reddit, started posting about us on like Discord, posted about us on Twitter. And like people start noticing when you post enough and you post like at a very periodic, like let's say like with a good sort of discipline, and then they start noticing you, they start using you, they start providing you feedback, and that's how we got like a lot of our users, right?
On this, virality point, Soham, obviously recently Elon Musk retweeted one of Karan's posts. How did it feel? Like, what was going on behind?
No, so yeah, I can go in depth on that, right? So for example, like we're talking about growth, right? Like, so Elon Musk has been retweeting a lot of Grok's posts, right, since last couple of like days and maybe a week now, right? And the idea was that we kind of anticipated that now that he's tweeting so many of Grok's posts, we should create an example with like what like Composio could work with, like with Grok essentially, right? We built that example. It was a very calculated post. We built actually multiple different examples, released all of them. Eventually, Elon kind of saw one of them, retweeted it, and it felt really good because like the whole company was kind of dancing because holy shit, it's a moment, right? Like when Elon's like retweeting something about Composio, and so of course like at a point in time it felt amazing, but at the other point in time we can actually talk about like how growth kind of works. And like this is one such thing where you kind of understand like what channel is working, this channel is working, maybe you go double down on it and you actually just go spend some time there, and maybe it works and it gives you a really good reward, right? So yeah, very nice feeling. We kind of got a cake that Elon retweeted us.
You got a cake?
Yeah, inside the company. But yeah, like those are the cool things you kind of need to do, right?
Yeah. I think the other highlight was when, Composio that got that little mention in Chip Huen's new book. And I was reading the book and that's when the tweet had come out. And I was like, okay, this is very cute. This is very interesting. I bought the book, kept it with me.
Yeah. For us, it was also a very big surprise because someone was reading the blog post and like suddenly saw, holy shit, Composio is here. And we kind of never really thought about it, right? Like someone would be actually noticing us and putting us somewhere. So yeah, for us, it was really, really big surprise, like because we all respect her a lot, right? So it was amazing, like, yeah.
Let me throw a curveball question at you. Like, what do you think is going to happen in AI in the next 5 years? Like, what's your crystal ball gaze there? Because you are so close to action, building a company, meeting a bunch of founders, companies who are trying to implement AI. Where do you think we will be 5 years from now?
I don't know. I have a very contradictory point of contrarian point of view here, which might not sit well with a lot of folks. But I think maybe not 5 years, but maybe a little longer. But for sure, AGI is coming, and when that happens, I think for sure like the amount of like we don't matter that much, and like when I say we don't matter that much, I really mean it.
We don't, as in, what do you mean by that?
I mean like a lot of intelligence becomes commodity, and so suddenly a lot of things like the way I think about it is it's almost like chess, right? Early on, like in the early days, when like computers were not powerful enough to win over chess, people really cared about it, and like I at least think people actually gave a lot of thought around like which country ended up winning chess championships, right? And like who was the person who was like the most intelligent person to win chess. Eventually came a time when like computers started just winning chess, right, over humans, and now it's a sport, right? And it's a very different kind of like, at least the feeling I get about it is very different than feeling I remember getting about.
I still care about chess, but okay, go on.
Yeah, no, I used to play chess nationals, right?
Okay.
I'm very involved with it. It's just like, yeah, you think about it very differently, right? like the day, like I remember, like when like I read about like, oh, human like computer won over chess or most humans or something like that. I almost gave up on it. I was like, what's the point of playing it, right? Like I'm just telling you. Like,
Yeah.
I think a lot of humans will go through that same feeling, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I think like that's actually the like I don't know. I do believe that's the future. Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, like I don't know whether it's in 5 years, 10 years, 15
Yeah, I don't know how far it is, but I think that it is there.
Yeah, I think the other part is like in your personal life, where have AI started really, you've started using it, impacting in a good way versus a bad way?
I don't know. I speak to ChatGPT 2 hours every day.
Doing what?
It's I literally learn from it. Like all my investor pitches were uploaded to ChatGPT, and then I was asking them like, did I do a good job at it? And like,
I remember seeing those transcripts.
yeah. If not, like, tell me like how do I improve?
Yeah.
Right. Like all my basically a lot of my internal like calls that I do inside the team also get uploaded there, and then I'm like, okay, what can we do better, right? Like it's for me like a lot of my personal life and my personal improvement is actually just like talking to ChatGPT and like basically realizing, okay, I can do this like nicer or better or like whatever.
Wow, that's very interesting. I think more and more people should start using ChatGPT for it.
Yeah, for sure. I think it creates a massive difference in your learning capabilities. We actually that's one of the things we look at, by the way, when we hire, which is like, does the person use Claude or ChatGPT now? Like,
How do you find out?
we just ask them like, okay, what do you do? Like how much is your usage? What was the last thing you actually learned from it? And like that gives you an idea very quickly. Like because I think at some point it's like it tells you about the curiosity the person has, because if they're not curious,
Yeah.
you don't really like at this point I think a lot of skills are just learnable very quickly because of like the resources at your disposal. So it's like is the person curious enough to learn it, right?
Yeah. No, very, very fair. I think we have started using ChatGPT just so much more, but totally get it. So now the next question is more about the fundraise, right? For AI founders building from India, whether and early stage founders, whether they are raising a seed, Series A, what has been your learnings and takeaways which could help a bunch of founders, right? And maybe some things worked for you, some things didn't work for you. But in reflection, what are some of those learnings where probably most of the founders can take leverage from?
Sure. I think like there are many things, right? Let me go one by one. So the first thing that like personally believe, like coming from India, you mostly like face issues with, like at least I did, right? Was like not having really big ambition, right? And the idea is like when you are kind of building in this silo, right, you're not talking to a lot of other people. The thing that you kind of start lacking is that how big something could be, right? Or what's the eventual outcome that you could have, right? And ambition helps a lot in many different ways, right? Like, so one thing is like internally you need to be really ambitious to actually build a really nice company, right? Like essentially. And then the second thing is in fundraising, ambition also helps a lot, because if you are like projecting a really long and like a large vision, right, then it clearly showcases to people that, hey, here's someone who actually is like trying to aim for this really big thing. And so that actually allows me to sort of make a bigger bet on the person, allows me to sort of land a bigger helping hand, right? And that is something that, at least personally for me, was one of the learnings that came in after talking to a bunch of people outside India on like how they thought about like what the eventual outcome could be, how they think about company building, how they think about like overall the space, right? And yeah, that is something that I personally think like a lot of my friends in India who were kind of building also lacked, and it came from them learning from outside India essentially. So that is one thing. The second thing could be, I think like you kind of need to start working with like, let's say, companies that are at cutting edge of the tech in terms of like having customers who can actually give you very, very good feedback. I think that is something that you also sometimes find it difficult being in India, getting those kinds of customers. But if you have those set of customers who could be like actually at the edge of the tech, they are really, really well known companies, they have a cutting edge product, then essentially it gives you a very different level of thinking in terms of how like the world is moving, how the tech is evolving, and how your product could be. And that actually also reflects when you go start talking to investors and you start pitching in. Like basically your customers actually tell a lot about like what your product is, and like having good set of customers just changes the dynamics of the funders itself, right? So yeah, that would be probably the second point. And then the third thing is like, if you are planning to, let's say, like raise from a really cool set of people, some of them might not be in India, some of them would be probably in US, then you do need a level of connect there. And like getting that by actually going there, spending a long set of time, actually sort of making real life sort of connections, uh, would be the right way to do it, and it takes time. So ideally plan for that, like spend some time there before you even think of fundraise, right? Like that would be just super helpful.
Got it. And how do you think about just really working with your investors, right? I know we have discussed it enough, but where do you think you need help versus where do you not? Like, what's your take on it as a founder?
I think like every founder has a very different style of working, and like basically for me personally, it has always been that I want people who help me when I need help, and I want people to actually maybe sometimes allow me time to think, right? Because when you are in the early stages of company building, a lot of times you just need some time to actually think through stuff, actually tinker around, experiment, and eventually get something going, right? And for for me, really good set of people are those who actually allow you that kind of time, right? They have the patience to sit and like listen to you when you are sort of just blabbering and you have nothing to show, and then they have actually patience to wait for something to get executed and eventually something else to start working, right? And yeah, I think those kind of folks who can be on the border when needed and then get involved when actually needed are like some of the best people out there. Yeah, so just to turn the tables around, like what got Elevation excited about investing in Composio?
That's a great question. Finally, I get to speak as well. No, but see, at that early stage, some things that you mentioned, right? In AI, things are evolving so fast. All of us had some thesis on integration, especially when we met you, that hey, things are going to change. Yeah, what it will become, I don't think we had a very clear answer. But what truly inspired us was just meeting you and Karan and then seeing how agile were you in thinking that, hey, this is the next thing that could happen. And every time there was a showcase of the next thing that could happen, right? Like whether agents was actually the last thing that we spoke about and it happened after the investment, after actually 6-8 months of investment. But every time we spoke to you, we could find that, hey, they know something new about where AI is headed. And that was the most exciting part, that hey, are these founders, A, who are there for the long term, which we could see very, very clearly. Second, who are truly excited about what's happening. Like there were days where I could meet you and you'll be like, this is so cool. This thing is so cool. That thing is so cool, because there was just so much excitement and you were ahead of the curve. In my opinion, in thinking about where AI was headed. And the third part was just the overall thesis itself, right? Like, hey, yes, new integration patterns need to emerge because of AI, and we all have answers to why. How will they look like? I don't think any of us knew, and we are still evolving in that direction. But A, disruption will happen. B, this is the young founding team which is so close to what they're building and are excited about everyday new happenings was basically the thesis for us. So it was just a huge bet on how you thought about AI.
That totally makes sense. Yeah, and I think that's like probably the right way to think about it today. Yeah.
Very interesting. And do you think what has worked so far will work in the future as well, or would you have to like rethink or keep on evolving as you go?
I think like that has been my learning, which is like in like the way I think about GTM now or the growth now is like it's all about channels, right? And each channel has a very different depth. What I mean by depth is like how big or the funnel could be, right? So for example, SEO is a channel which is very, very well known channel, and it has like almost insane level of depth, right? Like Discords are another channel where like they have fairly limited depth, and like they could be explored very quickly. So I think in the early stages of the company, you want channels that could be very easy to explore, maybe has limited depth, but like that's fine by you because you only want some set of users. And like as you grow bigger and bigger, you start looking into different channels that could have different depths associated to it, and like you basically keep exploring all of this different kind of avenues that you find, right? Like, so we constantly keep exploring different sort of places where we can put out Composio and test out. And yeah, I think some of the early channels don't really work anymore for us because we grow a little too big, but like there are other channels that we explore around.
So Soham, I've like so far only asked you what's working, what's been exciting, what's some of the setbacks you have had so far early in your journey, like something that you were really excited about that would work and it didn't work out.
So many things, right?
So many things.
Yeah, because see, when you are of the tinkering mindset or when you're exploring, you kind of have like different ideas, different things you want to test around. And I think it's very important actually to keep doing those things until something works. So I think we did like whatever 8 iterations of product before the current iteration of Composio, right? And all of those 8 iterations are little different, little the thing, because we thought like maybe this is how like the good experience could look like, right? Or like this is how the right sort of value would come across, and it just didn't really work, right? We spent like 3 months just like tinkering around and experimenting with different sets of like variations and iterations of the same product essentially, right? I think there's a fair amount of sort of work that goes in before something actually clicks, and you just need to iterate fast enough. Like for us, a lot of these iterations were like almost like every week we used to do one iteration and like just tinker around and test.
Yeah. And so what is the most exciting thing that has happened so far for you?
I think like for me, it has always been the first person that came in to a website and we basically had like post-hoc install. We could see the recording of the user coming in and seeing, oh, this is interesting, clicking on a bunch of buttons and then like copy pasting the code and tinkering around. For me, it has always been the most exciting moment of the company itself. It feels really good to see someone come and use your product essentially.
So that's super cool. So we are all very excited about where Composio is headed. It's such an interesting time in the AI wave today, where companies are getting built. But the top of the mind share that you have been able to create, and also the way we are building the product, the way we are just excited about innovation, disruption, and getting the word out. I think it's very fascinating, and I'm pretty sure a lot of founders who are viewing this today can take some learnings. It's early days, but I think as an ecosystem, we are all learning, and maybe there are some learnings from this as well. Thank you.